Do you ever feel like history has a way of repeating itself? Like when you expect change, but end up getting more of the same? Earlier this year, with your support, we defeated the previous Conservative government's plans to spy on everyone's bank account on the premise of dealing with welfare fraud and error. I even delivered your message to number 10 after tens of thousands of you signed our petition to stop these powers in their tracks. But now, Sir Keir Starmer is planning to bring these draconian powers back. We've come down to Westminster once again to track down politicians to ask them if we can have a look at their bank accounts too. How would you feel if you had your bank account monitored?
No, I completely understand, and that's why the checks and balances have got to be there. I don't know what checks and balances the government's proposing, but they need to be made sure that they are appropriate, because we'd all be concerned about the power of the state and where it uses that power.
No. Would you be worried about that? How would you feel if that happened to you?
Well, actually, ironically, one thing that MPs and peers are worried about is the politically exposed person. Public figures actually do find themselves in great distress because they find their banks are not prepared to give them services and are indeed spying on their account. If you remind them what happened to them and then say, imagine what it'd be like if you're on the dole, I know that's an old-fashioned phrase, and suddenly you find that you're being spied on. And to remind ourselves, they are giving themselves the power to spy on every single citizen based on a understandable concern about people ripping off welfare services. Nobody wants that to happen. They use that as the excuse and then give themselves these completely illiberal powers that will be an assault on civil liberties for everyone.
Can I chat to you for a second? One second? The new welfare powers and it's the bank spying powers. So we just saw Liz Kendall just behind me outside of Parliament. She is the Secretary of State for the Department for Work and Pensions. She's in charge of these new bank spying powers. Unfortunately, she didn't want to give us her time, so we didn't manage to catch anything from her. And we don't know if she minds the government monitoring her bank account.
I know when we proposed something similar, there were concerns raised by some of our own parliamentarians, people on our side of the political divide. So, and I fully understand those concerns. You want to make sure we restrict the power of the state to be able to do things when it's very appropriate.
I find it particularly distasteful that they're doing it on the idea of clamping down on benefit fraud. So even in and of itself, that makes me feel slightly icky, because it's using often people who are already vulnerable anyway, but then to have a power grab so that they will be able to spy on all of us.
Lastly, we have seen in the course of our work that this area of kind of like financial freedom and kind of financial privacy seems to be coming under attack more and more. You've got things like central bank digital currencies where the state would issue, a kind of centralised pound, if you like. We've seen other areas where, groups like, protesters, Canadian truckers, in the past, WikiLeaks have had accounts shut down when they've kind of gone against the grain. Now we're seeing another kind of different encroachment on financial freedom. Do you think this is like a kind of new frontier in the fight to protect civil liberties?
I think it really is. I mean, on the one hand, there's a cynical, opportunistic attempt at exploiting the fact that we're all concerned about corruption. We all know that there was major rip-offs and all sorts of shenanigans went on, for example, during lockdown, where people kind of helped themselves almost to public money. And so if they deploy that as their excuse, people can feel, well, if they're ripping us off, if public funds are being stolen or what have you, do what you need to do. That's a very dangerous situation, because it gives a green light to exactly what you're saying. I don't know if any of your viewers or listeners have had a situation where they've not got a bank, they've lost their card. Yeah. I mean, you literally can't operate without a bank account. You can't even operate without a bank card. You can't go on the tube. You can't do anything. I mean, you're literally stopped, because one of the worrying things about an increasingly cashless society, which I don't like, is that you can just be told, no, you're just stuck here. And I have had that experience, and it's a really harrowing one. You cannot operate as a full citizen in UK society without a bank account, without a bank card, and therefore the fact that they're using that, it's being weaponised, potentially turn into a political football, is very harrowing indeed, because they will, as they did with the Canadian truckers, use it, I think, to shape political outcomes, and we should never let that happen.
We're expecting these powers to return imminently in Labour's fraud, error and debt bill. Before then, we need to make as much noise as possible. We've relaunched our petition and we're just hundreds of signatures away from reaching 200,000. But before then, we need your help to make a big clamour. There's a link to sign the petition in the description of this video. Please share it far and wide. And if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to our channel and give it a like.